Good evening, Center Fork. It is time for your weekly dose of encouragement and information here on the Midweek Update. Thanks for tuning in, and let's get right to it. We had a wonderful Easter service this past Sunday. We had a record attendance for COVID of 232, which is wonderful. It's still below our normal AM worship attendance back before COVID, but to have 232 people in services as this COVID-19 begins to wind down was a wonderful blessing. We had multiple first-time guests, some new faces that we have not seen before. The choir, led by Brother Sean on stage for a congregational song, and then the choir special with the orchestra joining in. It was just thrilling and beautiful and encouraging. And at the end of our service, we welcomed a brand new member to our church family, Sheila Crace. Came into our church family through her profession of faith and also through the waters of baptism. And we got to meet her son and her daughter-in-law and also her granddaughter, and they were able to share Easter Sunday with us here at Center Fork, which is one of the reasons why Baptism Sundays are so exciting, because you get to invite as many people as you can to see your baptism and preach the gospel to them, not only from what's preached in the service, but by the ordinance itself. So what a great way to kick off Easter and to finish our Easter service to have a baptism. We also had a generous offering on Sunday that should set us up for a great April, and another $3,500 came in for our PRC, our Principal Reduction Campaign. And remember, if you've received your Uncle Sam stimulus of $1,400 per person, don't forget to tithe off of that amount. And we're challenging you to tithe off of that stimulus money and give it directly to the Principal Reduction Campaign. And we set a goal of $14,000 about 3 weeks ago, and we're only $4,000 away from that goal right now. We had an offering this past week of $3,500 towards the PRC, so we're hoping in the next week or two to round that off and be able to say that we've accomplished that goal for this month. And what a great blessing that would be. And you know, when a big service like Easter comes together, and I know that you know this, I just want to remind you that there are people behind the scenes, like our sound people, our Facebook Live, computer operators. We've got multiple sound people, not just one but two. We've got people that are running the lights, and but lots of things behind the scenes that happen. In fact, one of the things that happened this past week is Brother Sean had to build from scratch new platforms for our projectors in the gymnasium, and he had to move the screens to accommodate the orchestra and the choir. And he built these by hand and got them installed all last week. And in addition to everything else he does serving you here at the church, he used his craftsmanship and skills to get that done this week, and we're thankful for that. And our worship pastor has some skills. I don't know if you know that, but he's got some skills, not just singing. Kathy Phillips also noticed on Sunday morning that we were almost out of masks, and without being asked and without wanting any notoriety, she zoomed off to Walmart, picked up a few boxes of masks for us so that we didn't run out on Sunday morning, which was a blessing. And when you showed up Sunday morning, our yard looked great, because during the week before our Easter service, our mowing team, led by Steve Carpenter, did a great job with the first mow and the first trim of this new spring year. Now for an update on our Foyer project. Many of you have asked about the Foyer project, and many of you have come over or stuck around and come over and looked through the area. Now I'm going to share with you on the screen here two drawings on the Wednesday update. One of these is a drawing of the empty space that will be created once we knock out all of the walls and install all of the beams to support all of that weight. The second one contains possible seating arrangements and decor arrangements that we have been discussing with our interior design consultant, Callie Self. So she's taken our ideas and our space, and she has brought it to life in this drawing. So if you'd like a copy of this drawing, just reach out to me. I can email you a PDF so you can look at it. And the great thing about it, you can pull that up on your computer, and then you can zoom in and see all of the information right there. And it is almost perfectly to scale. So that really is a good idea space-wise of what it's going to look like once this project comes to life, if we choose to move forward with it. And remember, April 18th, we're having a members meeting. So remember, mark it on your calendar, April 18th. We're going to be bringing you a recommendation regarding this Foyer project. So the Foyer team will have a recommendation for you. And anytime you have a question about this project, about the information in the project, what changes we're making, and the whys and all of those things, just ask us. Call Gina, call me, call Sean. We'll take you through the space. Call one of our, or contact one of our Foyer team members, and they will be more than willing to explain it to you, and we can meet you here at the church and walk through the space and show you what the plans are. So remember, April 18th, as we look at the possibility of moving forward with this Foyer project. Now for some prayer requests and a few updates. We did have some good news this past Sunday. Bill Driggers was with us. He's almost completely vaccinated, but he was back with us for Easter Sunday, which was such a blessing. But unfortunately, Jimmy Driggers suffered a setback this weekend. He had a drop in oxygen level and also a fever come up, and so he is back in the hospital at CHI with fluid buildup. The good news is he is improving. He's out of ICU and in a normal room. I got to see him personally yesterday in the hospital. He looks good, his color is good, and his numbers are headed in the right direction. So let's just pray for his breathing to improve and those numbers to improve so that he can get home real soon. Also, I talked with Dot Harmon. She had to go back into surgery for a procedure for a hematoma to address a problem with the scar and the surgical spot where they did the surgery on her neck. And so they had to bring her back to the hospital. She's been in the hospital last Monday and then this Monday, and so we joked on the phone today that she needs to shoot for 3 weeks. Try to get a week without being in the hospital. We don't want to have 3 weeks in a row. So continue to pray for her healing. And I just want to ask you to continue to remember John Wheeler and Roland Norman. They are both facing some difficult days ahead, and I'm asking you to pray fervently for God's will and God's best, God's wisdom for both of these men and their families. So remember, as you see all of these prayer requests, lift up your brothers and sisters in prayer. And just two quick updates on some surgeries. Brother Mike Mullins had shoulder surgery. He had a torn labrum, and it was pretty extensive, and he had a pretty extensive surgery, and he is in the throes of recovery and rehab this week. And his niece also had this surgery. Cassidy King had surgery today, and it went well, was a success, and she's entering the process of rehabilitation. So pray for these two specifically as they begin rehab, and hopefully they'll both see improvement in their shoulder, the use of their shoulders, and hopefully Cassidy will be back to serving a volleyball real soon. All right, now a word from the Word. You know, church, sometimes the word retreat is used in a lot of different contexts. And unfortunately, though, the word retreat sometimes has a negative connotation when it's used. But when you look at its usage militarily, there are a lot of different types of withdrawals or retreats. And we could talk about those, and I could maybe get a military man in here or a woman in here to talk about the specifics. But let me just give you two that are sometimes used. So sometimes a withdrawal or a retreat is called a rout. This is a retreat where the army flees from a battle in a disorganized way because of defeat, because of fear, because of poor planning or poor leadership, poor communication. There can be lots of reasons for a rout, but this is where the enemy has come, and because of what's happening on the field of battle, there's just a rout, and the enemy instead of retreating in an organized way, it's just a complete rout and is disorganized and in disarray. Another way retreat is used, it's sometimes called a tactical withdrawal. So tactical means there are tactics, that there's planning, there's purposes, there are reasons for the withdrawal. This refers to a military operation of retreat or withdrawal where you maintain contact with the enemy, but you withdraw to consolidate your forces, maybe to consolidate not only your forces but also your supplies. Sometimes you retreat to occupy ground that is more easily defended. So sometimes in a battle you extend yourself too far and you're not really ready to take on that new ground, so you need to retreat to a defensible position. You can even use a tactical withdrawal or a retreat to lure an enemy into an ambush. You can retreat in such a way that it causes them to rush too far forward, and then you can close them off. But retreats or tactical withdrawals are risky, and they do require discipline. That's why you need to be very careful. But sometimes in the military world or sporting world, they are necessary. And you know what? In the church world, in the spiritual battle that we are in against our enemy, as we try to take the gospel to the ends of the earth, as we're trying to take the gospel to Lake Hamilton, to make disciples of all the people in Hot Springs, Garland County, Arkansas, United States, and the world, there are times that we have to retreat, that we need to have an organized, tactical withdrawal. Now, this doesn't mean that we're admitting defeat. It doesn't mean that we're running from the battle. It means sometimes in ministry we need to back up, reassess, pray, think, and strategize before we redeploy back into the battle. And I've been thinking about this over the last 13 months as we have begun to slowly reopen, and hopefully over the next few months we'll continue to open up even more. But we still are in a tactical withdrawal kind of operation or mode of operation. We need to be asking questions. So if you're a ministry leader over children's ministry or adult ministry or Sunday school, or you're a deacon of the church, you need to be asking these kinds of questions as we think about our ministries reopening and working. Number one, who are we serving with this ministry? Who do we have to serve, and who are we trying to reach in our community? Those are two important questions when it comes to ministry. If the first question about your ministry is, what do I want to do? What do I want to accomplish? You have completely misunderstood what ministry is. Ministry is about other people. So who are we trying to serve? Who is it that we're trying to reach with this ministry? Why are we doing this ministry? And is this ministry something that is actually making disciples? Is it teaching people? Is it equipping people? Is it extending the Great Commission? What ministries can we relaunch, and what changes do we need to make to existing ministries? Who are we trying to reach, and does this ministry really push the Great Commission forward? That's what it means when we talk about a tactical withdrawal. Those are the kinds of questions we should be asking. Because remember, as we get through COVID, remember, we're not welcoming you back to church. We are welcoming you forward to church. Our goal at Center Fork as we enter into this season of ministry of 2021 is not to just be busy with ministry. Our goal is to be effective in ministry. We want the things that we do to produce disciples and to actually push the Great Commission forward. So we're not just trying to be busy. Secondly, we're also not just trying to get bigger, because the goal isn't to be bigger, church. God's in charge of the bigger. What we're in charge of is being effective, being better at ministry, being better at teaching, better at reaching people, better at calling on people, better at following up with people, better at praying for people and with people, better at sharing the gospel. We don't want to just be bigger, we want to be better. And if we are better for the glory of God and for the good of others, God will take care of our numerical growth. And our goal isn't to think, what ministries can we start because I want a ministry? Our goal is to think like a missionary. Who are we trying to serve? And who are we trying to reach as we do ministry? The point is simple. Sometimes we have to stop, reassess, and reorganize to move forward. After the death of Jesus, the disciples were in disarray. The apostles were in disarray. The women who followed Jesus, they were all confused, hurt. It was just a time of what it felt like on that battlefield after the death of Jesus and before the resurrection. And even after the resurrection, they felt like they had been routed. And they had run from the field of battle, and that the enemy had won and the battle was over. And then Jesus, of course, resurrects, and he appears to Mary and the women, and he appears to Peter and to the disciples on the road to Emmaus. And he then appears over the course of 40 days 10 different times to the apostles and to the first church. One of those is listed in John chapter 20. This is on the evening of that first Sunday. And it said this, "Then the same day at evening, being the first day of the week, when the doors were shut, where the disciples were assembled for fear of the Jews, Jesus came and stood in the midst and said to them, 'Peace be with you.'" This traditional Hebrew this traditional Hebrew greeting of shalom, God's peace be with you. And of course, it took on extra special meaning because they were hiding in the upper room. They were afraid of what the leaders might do to them if they found them. They were afraid because they were just completely confused. What would they do going forward? Who would they be if Jesus is really dead? What sense does all of this make? And Jesus offers them peace. And then he said, he showed them his hands and his side. Then the disciples were glad when they saw the Lord. So there's peace, there's gladness or joy. And then Jesus says this, "Peace to you, as the Father has sent me, I also send you." Now, what's interesting, this is like a pre-Pentecost Pentecost. If you go ahead and read the rest of this passage down into verse 23. But after Jesus appears to them and sends them, you know what they did? Nothing. They continued to wait. They continued to pray together, to meet together. Later, some of them went to Galilee and went back to fishing. And they went to Galilee and met with Jesus. And they eventually met with Jesus in different contexts and different ways. And actually, nothing really happened after this kind of pre-Pentecost sending of Jesus. Jesus was sending them out just like the Father had sent them. But in the period of time between his resurrection and the day of Pentecost, the disciples in that early church were in a tactical withdrawal. They were waiting, they were praying, they were thinking, they were processing everything that had happened. And, you know, church, this is a time for us to do that. This is a time for us to reassess as a church, to take a breath, to take a beat, to pause. And as we begin to redeploy and to re-enlist people into ministry, and as we welcome forward to church, we need to think through all of those kinds of questions, because Jesus has sent us just like he sent them. But even as we try to move forward with the Great Commission, there are times when we need to stop and have a retreat, a tactical withdrawal. And don't get discouraged by this, church. Listen, you don't need to be discouraged about welcoming forward to church and think, oh no, it's not going to be, well, no, it's not going to be like it was. But this is going to be good, folks. As we begin to slowly reopen and this virus goes away, as we're praying that God will make that happen, we don't need to be discouraged. We don't need to give up on church, and we certainly don't need to give up on each other, and we certainly don't need to give up on Jesus. We are not in a rout. We aren't running or retreating from the battle. As we welcome you forward to church and to a new day at Center Fork Baptist Church, I'm praying and I'm asking you to pray that God will give us the wisdom and also the courage as we try to move the kingdom of God forward, as we try to make disciples of all the nations beginning right here in our community. Because as we learned last week, the tomb is still empty. We have the life-changing message of the gospel to preach and to share. We have a commission that will give us a work and a purpose and something to do until the day we die or until the day Jesus comes back, that will take us to every person in our community, to every people group in our community, and to every inch of this globe so that all can hear the good news of Jesus. We have the power of the Holy Spirit in us as individuals and as a church to be witnesses to this generation. While we have breath on this planet, we have been given the power to be a witness for the resurrected Jesus Christ. And folks, we have each other. We have the church. Spirit-filled, gifted people who believe in Jesus, who are following Jesus with us, standing side by side to advance the cause. So don't get discouraged about our tactical retreat. Be encouraged by it. Welcome forward to church. And I hope to see you this Sunday.